I'm embarrassed to be seen with you, she said when I asked to go to her work party, so I packed my bags while she was there alone. She returned to a quiet house and a note that said, "Problem solved. Now you'll never be seen with me again." Judging by the 50 voicemails she left crying, I guess she misses the embarrassment. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. The silk of the tie felt cool and smooth between my fingers. I focused on the simple, practiced motion: over, under, through, pull, a small anchor in the pleasant buzz of the evening. From the bathroom, I could hear Qley humming, the sound punctuated by the clink of perfume bottles. "Can you believe this is the first gala since the merger?" she called out, her voice bright with excitement. "All the bigwigs from the West Coast will be there. This is my shot, Mark, to really be seen." "They'd be idiots not to see you," I said, giving my nod a final tighten in the reflection of the hallway mirror. I looked fine. The navy suit was a few years old, but still fit well. I felt a familiar flicker of pride, not for me, but for her. For us. I'd picked up a bottle of her favorite Prosecco on the way home, and it was chilling in the fridge for a post-party debrief. I wandered into the bedroom doorway. She was a vision, a whirlwind of purposeful energy in a sharp, black dress that meant business. She was scrutinizing her eyeliner in the vanity mirror, her focus absolute. "You know," I said, leaning against the doorframe, a smile in my voice. "Old Man Henderson actually complimented the new shelving unit today. Said the dovetail joints were a lost art." I think he almost smiled. Qley didn't turn from the mirror. "That's nice, honey." "It is. It means he'll probably recommend me for that big library restoration job. The one I told you about." The humming had stopped. She was now applying a second coat of mascara, her movements precise and final. The air in the room felt different, charged with a silence that wasn't there before. I pushed off the doorframe, a slight unease creeping into my gut. "All right," I said, clapping my hands together softly. Ready to knock him dead. I turned and picked up my jacket from the bed, slipping one arm in. That's when she spoke. Her voice was different. No longer bright, but low, strained. "Mark, wait." I paused, one arm in the jacket, and turned back to her. She had finally turned away from the mirror. She was looking at me, but her expression was unreadable, a tight, pained mask. "What's up? Did I forget something?" I asked, glancing around. She took a slow breath, as if steeling herself for a difficult presentation. "Look, this is awkward, but it's probably better if you don't come tonight." The words hung in the air, not quite computing. I let out a small, confused laugh. "What? Why? I've been looking forward to this all week. I want to meet your team, the people you talk about all the time. It's just..." She gestured vaguely, her eyes darting away from mine. "It's a really, really important night for me. A lot of VPs and C-suite people will be there. It's about perception." A cold knot began to form in my stomach. Perception of what? She met my eyes then, and hers were hard, like chips of flint. All the earlier excitement had vanished, replaced by a cold, clinical assessment. Her voice dropped, each word deliberate and sharp as a scalpel. "Of me, Mark. Your whole vibe." Her gaze swept over me, from my slightly too conservative tie to my reliable, comfortable dress shoes. "The dad jokes you'll inevitably tell. These sensible shoes. Talking about your woodworking projects with people who trade startups like baseball cards. I'm embarrassed to be seen with you." The words didn't just hit me, they unmade me. It was like a physical blow, sucking the air from my lungs. The room seemed to tilt on its axis. "Embarrassed," she continued, the dam now broken. "You don't fit in that world. You don't speak the language. You'd just be standing there, a constant reminder of a quiet, small life. You'd hold me back. Hold me back." The final, brutal twist of the knife. 5 years. 5 years of supporting her through late nights, of proofreading presentations, of being her safe harbor from the corporate storm. And I was a liability, an embarrassment. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. Something inside me simply switched off. The part of me that loved her, that was proud of her, that saw a future, it just shut down, replaced by a ringing, glacial silence. I could see her mouth still moving, offering some other justification, but I couldn't hear the words anymore. All I could hear was the echo of my own respect for her shattering into a million icy fragments. Slowly, mechanically, I shrugged my jacket off my shoulder and let it fall back onto the bed. The silk of the tie around my neck suddenly felt like a noose. My voice, when I found it, was quiet, hollow, devoid of all emotion. Okay. She blinked, thrown by the lack of fight. Okay. So you understand. I looked right at her, but I wasn't really seeing her anymore. I was seeing a stranger who had just shown me her true, horrifying face. I understand perfectly, I said, my tone flat and final. You should go. Don't want to be late. Relief washed over her features. She actually smiled, a small, tight thing, mistaking my catatonic shock for acquiescence. Okay, good. We'll talk later. She grabbed her clutch, gave her reflection one last, satisfied glance, and walked out of the bedroom. I heard the front door open and close with a soft, definitive click. The silence she left behind was louder than any scream. I stood there, in the middle of the room we shared, in the home I'd helped build, and felt the walls of my life crumble to dust around me. The click of the front door was the starting pistol. The shock that had frozen me in the bedroom thawed instantly, not into heat, but into a cold, crystalline clarity. There was no pain yet. That would come later. Now, there was only a single, unambiguous objective: extraction. I walked to the closet and looked at my suits hanging beside her dresses. A shared life. I reached not for a garment bag, but for the old, worn duffel bag stuffed on the top shelf, the one I used for gym clothes and weekend trips. It was all I would need. My movements were not rushed. They were precise, efficient. I was a ghost tidying up before moving on to the next world. I started with my desk drawer, the one that held my passport, social security card, the title to my truck, the foundational documents of a life. They went into the duffel bag. Next, I moved to the bedroom, packing only the clothes that were unequivocally mine. The jeans, the t-shirts, the comfortable sweaters she'd always rolled her eyes at. I left behind the expensive cufflinks she'd bought me for my birthday, still in their velvet box. I left the designer shirt she'd insisted on, saying it classed up my look. They were costumes from a play I was no longer acting in. A memory, unbidden, flashed behind my eyes. Us painting this very bedroom 2 years ago. She'd gotten a speck of tranquil gray on her nose, and I'd kissed it off. We'd collapsed laughing on a drop cloth, dreaming of a future in this room. The future she just told me was an embarrassment. I shut the memory down. It was an artifact from a dead civilization. I moved to the bathroom. My toothbrush, my razor, the unscented deodorant she hated. Into the bag. I left the fancy cologne, the grown-up skincare products she'd curated for me. From the kitchen, I took only one thing. The multi-tool my father had given me, its weight familiar and comforting in my palm. The final stop was the spare room I used as a workshop. The smell of sawdust and linseed oil was a balm. This was me, the real me, the one that didn't fit in her world. I looked at the half-finished cherrywood jewelry box on the bench. I'd been working on it for her for Christmas, carving a delicate vine pattern along the sides. My fingers traced the smooth wood one last time. Then, I picked up my toolbox, a heavy, metal case containing my chisels, my hand planes, my marking gauges. This was non-negotiable. The duffel bag and the toolbox. That was all I would take from 5 years of a life. It was astonishing how little of us was actually me. Now, for the note. I wouldn't give her a novel. I wouldn't give her my tears or my rage for her to dissect with her friends. She deserved only a receipt. I found a single, crisp piece of printer paper and a pen on the kitchen counter, the same counter where I'd left the Prosecco cooling pointlessly. I didn't sit. I stood, and with a steady hand, I wrote 2 sentences. They were not an expression of feeling. They were a statement of cause and effect. A closing of the ledger. Problem solved. Now you'll never be seen with me again. I centered it on the counter, where she would inevitably see it. The Prosecco bottle stood beside it like a monument to our former life. I didn't touch it. I slung the duffel over my shoulder, hefted the toolbox in my other hand, and took one last look around. The apartment was perfectly clean, perfectly ordered. It looked exactly as it had when she left, except for the quiet, fundamental fact that I was no longer in it. I had erased myself with surgical efficiency. I walked to the front door, opened it, and stepped through into the hallway. I pulled the door closed behind me. I didn't slam it. I didn't hesitate. I closed it with a soft, final click that echoed in the silent hall, a sound more definitive than any lock could ever be. The The first night was the hardest. Not because I missed her, but because I had to remember who I was before I became Qley's embarrassing boyfriend. I'd checked into a cheap, anonymous motel on the edge of town. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and industrial cleaner, but the silence was mine. There were no her expectations, no her perfumes, no her sounds. Just the hum of the AC unit and the hollow echo in my own chest. I sat on the edge of the bed, the duffel bag and toolbox at my feet like refugee belongings, and let the full weight of the unfairness press down on me. I didn't fight it. I just sat in it, allowing the humiliation and betrayal to wash over me until they were just emotions, like any other. Painful, but not fatal. My phone, face down on the nightstand, lit up. The screen flashed Qley. I watched it until it went to voicemail. A minute later, it did it again. And again. I didn't block her. Not yet. I needed to hear it. I needed to hear the consequences of her words. After the fifth call, I picked up the phone. I went to my voicemail, put it on speaker, and set it back down. I started unpacking my few belongings into the motel's cheap dresser. The first message played. Her voice was a confused, shaky whisper, so unlike the sharp, confident tone from hours before. Mark? Where are you? The house is so empty. What is this note? This isn't funny. Call me back. We need to talk. I folded a t-shirt and placed it in a drawer. We need to talk. The classic opener for her to explain why her feelings were the only ones that mattered. I deleted the message. The next one came 20 minutes later. The confusion had curdled into anger. So you're just going to ghost me? After 5 years? That's so immature. You're proving my point. You can't handle a strong woman. You need to come back and face this like an adult. I almost smiled. The irony was perfect. She discards me like a piece of outdated furniture, and my refusal to engage is my failure to be an adult. I was being the adultest I'd ever been. I deleted it. The calls kept coming, but I stopped listening to them in real time. I let them pile up in a digital cairn of her own making. For the next week, I focused on the mechanics of survival. I found a month-to-month rental, a small studio apartment above a quiet garage. It was nothing fancy, but it had space for a workbench. I unblocked my old client list and started making calls. Old man Henderson was true to his word. The library restoration job was mine. I worked. I sanded old floors until my muscles ached and my mind was blank. I measured. I cut. I joined. The physicality of it was a purge. Each swing of the hammer drove her voice a little further from my head. One evening, after a long day at the library, I finally sat down in my new, sparse living room with a beer. The silence was no longer hollow. It was peaceful. I picked up my phone and scrolled to the voicemail list. 53 messages. I took a long swallow of beer and pressed play. They were a symphony of unraveling. Mark, please. I saw the note. Problem solved. What does that mean? This is crazy. Just call me. My mom is asking where you are. What am I supposed to tell her? That you had a tantrum and left? This is so humiliating. Okay, fine. I was harsh. I was stressed. But you can't just disappear. We have a life together. Bills, a lease. You're being so irresponsible. Then, the tone shifted again. The anger bled out, replaced by a creeping fear. The apartment is so quiet. I hate it. I can't sleep. I went to that gala alone. It was awful. Everyone asked where you were. I felt so stupid. And then, the one I knew was coming. The one mentioned in the title. Her voice was raw, broken, stripped of all its polished arrogance. It was the sound of pure, panicked regret. A ragged sob, then a broken whisper. Mark, please. I'm sorry, okay? I didn't mean it. I was just stressed about work. Please, I can't be here alone. It's so quiet. I miss you. Just call me back. Please. I sat there, the phone in my hand, the plea hanging in the air of my peaceful apartment. I felt nothing. No surge of victory, no twinge of sympathy. It was just data. Evidence of a problem that was no longer mine to solve. Judging by the 50 voicemails she left crying, I thought, placing the phone back on the table, I guess she misses the embarrassment. Or maybe she just missed the audience for her drama, the reliable fixture in the background of her life that she never had to think about. Until it was gone. I selected all the voicemails and pressed delete. Then, I went into my contacts, found Qley, and with a calm, definitive press of my finger, I blocked her number. The silence in my apartment was perfect. It was no longer an absence. It was a presence. It was mine. 6 months is a long time when you're building something new. The dust from the old life had settled, and I'd used it to mix the mortar for the new one. My studio apartment was no longer sparse. It was a sanctuary, filled with the scent of cedar and the quiet satisfaction of my own making. The library restoration was complete, featured in a local magazine, and new clients were seeking me out for custom pieces. I was no longer Mark, Qley's embarrassment. I was Mark, the craftsman. I'd met Sarah at the library, of all places. She was a graphic designer, researching artisanal typography for a book project. We'd started talking about the grain of the oak paneling I'd restored, and somehow ended up talking for 2 hours over coffee. She was sharp, funny, and her eyes lit up when I explained the joinery in a table I was building. She saw the art in it. She fit in my world perfectly. We were at The Grind, a coffee shop I now frequented, nestled in a warm, wooden corner. I was telling her about the absurdity of my last client, a man who wanted a walnut desk inlaid with mother of pearl, but balked at the price of walnut. Sarah was laughing, her hand resting lightly on my forearm. The sound was easy, natural. It didn't have to compete for space. The bell on the door jingled. I didn't pay it any mind until I felt a presence hovering at the edge of our table. I looked up. It was Qley. She looked diminished. Her sharp, power dress had been replaced with a rumpled sweater and jeans. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, no intricate styling. There were shadows under her eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. She looked tired. Human. Mark. Hi, she said, her voice tentative, almost meek. I didn't stand. I simply nodded, my expression neutral. Qley. Sarah glanced between us, her expression curious but not threatened. She sensed the shift in the air. Can we talk for a minute? Please. Qley's eyes were pleading, desperate. I didn't look at Sarah for permission. I just gave her a small, reassuring smile before turning my gaze back to Qley. I would not grant her the privacy of a separate conversation. That was a privilege for people who mattered. We can speak here, I said, my voice calm and even. She flinched, her eyes darting to Sarah and then back to me. This wasn't the script she'd written. She'd expected a private, dramatic scene where she could perform her contrition. She stammered, flushing. I made a huge mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. The words tumbled out, practiced and rushed. Everything fell apart after you left. Work has been hell. They passed me over for the promotion. My friends, they're all so fake. I see now what I had. What I threw away. I said nothing. I just waited, letting the silence between her words amplify their emptiness. You were my rock, she whispered, her voice cracking. I was stupid and stressed, and I took it out on you. I don't care about any of that perception stuff anymore. It's all a lie. The parties, the clothes, it's empty. I just want you back. I want us back. She was crying now, genuine tears tracing paths through her faint makeup. The ultimate performance. Once, that sight would have shattered me. Now, it was just weather. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my coffee, placed the cup back in its saucer with a soft clink, and looked at her. My final words were not loud, but they were firm, definitive, and carried the absolute weight of truth. I believe you, Qley. A flicker of hope ignited in her wet eyes. I believe you think you made a mistake, I continued. But for me, it was a solution. That note I left, it wasn't written in anger. It was a statement of fact. You were right. I didn't fit in your world. And I realized, sitting in that motel room, that you never fit in mine. You were just a guest who overstayed her welcome. I gestured slightly, gracefully, to Sarah, who was watching me with a quiet, profound understanding. This is my life now, I said, my voice softening not for Qley, but in genuine contentment. And it's a good one. I hope you find what you're looking for, but you need to understand, you won't find it with me. We're done. Have a good day. I turned back to Sarah, reaching for my coffee again. So, as I was saying, the client actually asked if he could just use a walnut veneer. The conversation resumed. It wasn't an act for Qley's benefit. It was a simple, powerful demonstration that her chapter in my life was not just closed, but the book had been archived. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her stand there for a moment longer, utterly powerless, a ghost at a feast she could no longer see, let alone taste. Then, she turned and walked away, the sound of her footsteps swallowed by the ambient noise of the shop. I didn't look back. There was no satisfaction, no schadenfreude. There was just peace. The problem was, indeed, solved. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.